Perfect. Can everybody hear me okay? Thumbs up? Perfect. Okay, well, wonderful. I am so thankful for everybody for joining us today. VegOttawa was so excited to have Nation Rising join us to celebrate World Vegan Month. I am a huge fan of everything that you are doing, Nation Rising team, and we are so excited that you are going to share your wealth of knowledge and help all of these dedicated animal advocates today. So I'm going to jump into bios. I'll probably start with Howard. So Howard has a BA in philosophy and economics from Columbia University and a PhD in philosophy from the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. He is the organizer and research lead for Nation Rising, and how I learned about Nation Rising at the Canadian Animal Law Conference. Well, I learned about it a little bit before, but how I started interacting with you guys. Howard is an associate professor of philosophy at the University of Alberta and works primarily in the field of ethics and has related interests in political philosophy, the philosophy of mind, and decision theory. I have no idea what decision theory is, but it sounds intriguing. Howard's research investigates topics such as the ethics of collective action, animal ethics, and animal mind. He has published numerous papers in philosophy and co-authored several papers in environmental economics. And much of his current research investigates the desirability and feasibility of a just transition to predominantly plant-based food system in Canada. Where Howard is also welcomed by Eleanor Carrera. So she has a Bachelor of Science from McGill in Biology and Ecology, an MBA from Concordia for Management, and is the outreach and policy lead for Nation Rising. Eleanor has been a committed lifelong animal rights activist, like us all, most of us, well, I mean, some of us are baby, an environmentalist who's focusing her efforts on institutions and awareness campaigns. Eleanor's professional career as Vice President of Sales Operations at Tata Communications, I hope I pronounced that right, one of the largest global digital infrastructure companies, has occupied most of her time over the past couple decades. And she now dedicates herself full-time to promoting plant-based food systems at the institutional level. An overview of the university plant-based initiative Eleanor launched in 2022 can be found at universities and plant-based meals. I'm going to copy that link and post it in the chat right now so everybody can have a look at that after this session concludes. And then we are also welcomed by Matthew Bryan, who is a member of Nation Rising. And I'll tell you a little bit more about Matthew. Matthew became a vegan almost 10 years ago after a search for the optimal diet for health and longevity. He's a passionate environmentalist and believes that a global transition to plant-based diet is the practical way for the human race to mitigate catastrophic climate change. Through his journey in veganism, Matthew has come to understand the unnecessary cruelty and inefficiency of the animal, agricultural, and fishing industries. His passion for plant-based diets now includes a desire to restore biodiversity and ecological resilience through rewilding and land back initiatives that the widespread adoption of these diets would allow. Matthew has received a Bachelor of Arts from the University of Tasmania and has also obtained a certificate from the eCornell Plant-Based Nutrition Program, which sounds really interesting. That's not in his bio, just to say, that's just me speaking out loud. He is a proud member of Nation Rising and believes that the only practical way to facilitate change is through engaging with the political process to promote the uptake of healthy, affordable, plant-based diets. So that's a little bit about the Nation Rising team, well, some of it that have joined us today. And without further ado, I will pass it off to Howard.
Great. Thanks so much, Liz. Really appreciate it. Thank you, VegOttawa, for hosting us. We are very grateful for that. Oops, sorry, just trying to, there we go, pull up my slides. Here we go. Here we are. So, thanks so much. So, Nation Rising is a nonpartisan political advocacy group, the mission of which is to change federal food and agricultural policy in Canada to support a just transition to a plant-based food system for the benefit of people, the planet, and animals. And our vision is a healthy, sustainable, and ethical plant-based food system in Canada. So here I'll just show you a quick graphic of our team here. So yeah, it's as Liz introduced us, so some of these folks down here who will be giving the talk. So there's me, Matthew, and Eleanor, and Ina will actually be coming at the end to ask some survey questions about possibly changing our name. But yeah, so we also have Jenny and Tila, and Brian, and Carrie. So here we go. Plan for today is that I'll start by saying a bit about why system change is so important for plant-based transition, what Nation Rising is up to along these lines, and how you can get involved. Then Matt, our contact person in Ottawa, will say a bit about how you can get in touch with him in order to do so. And then Eleanor, our outreach and policy lead, will say a bit in particular about the federal procurements campaign that you can get involved with our group, as well as related opportunities to campaign for plant-based procurements at the municipal and university level, which Eleanor has been involved with, which has been really amazing so far. And then finally, Ina is going to wrap up with some questions about potentially changing the name of our group, which is something about which we're thinking right now. Okay, so rapid action to stop and reverse global increases in the consumption of animal products is quite urgent. Sorry, my mouse ever works here. Global meat consumption is actually continuing to rise at a pretty staggering rate. COVID maybe put a slight hold on it just a little bit for a couple of years, but it's coming right back. What's going on is that the global north is maintaining its meat-heavy diet patterns that have been developed and become increasingly meat-heavy over the last 100 years. And the global south is rapidly catching up to the global north, sort of imitating these patterns in many ways, in many cases for prestige reasons that are very problematically colonial and things like that. So humans and livestock now, because of these dynamics, already comprise 96% of the global mammalian biomass. And farmed birds already comprise 70% of the global avian biomass. So basically the world is being taken from the free living animals for animal agriculture at a staggering rate. And in Canada, things aren't really changing very much either as a rich country. So Canada, out of a population of 37 million in 2018, only 2.3 million were vegetarian and 850,000 only were vegan. Per capita meat consumption in Canada has basically been stable in recent years. You can look at the pattern there. But with the trend towards consuming chickens, more animals are actually being slaughtered in Canada than ever before. So, for example, Animal Justice reports on its Kill Clock page that in 2019, 834 million land animals were killed for food in Canada, up 818 million in up from 818 million in 2018, 800 million in 2017, and 771 million in 2017. Sorry, I've got my thing sort of covering this up. I wish I could move it. Sorry. There we go. 771 million in 2016. So we simply don't have enough land to feed everyone this way, especially given world population growth. So Alexander and colleagues estimated that it would take 130% of habitable land on Earth to feed everyone just in 2011 with the diet that was being consumed by Canadians. And the diet being consumed by Canadians was basically very comparable in terms of animal products and resource intensivity as in 2022. But in 2011, the world population was only 7 billion humans, and the world population is projected by the UN to level off in the year 2100 around 10.4 billion, but it could be as high as 12.4 billion. And 10.4 billion who would be fed like Canadians would need 1.93 Earths of land just to eat. And 12.4 billion would need 2.3 Earths if they're eating like Canadians. So everyone could easily be fine if they're just consuming plant-based diets. But if they're eating these meat-heavy diets that are holding steady in Canada, we're going to run out of land really quickly. We'd need twice as much Earth as we have just to feed everyone. So unfortunately, it's extremely difficult for most consumers to make lifestyle changes towards things like plant-based diets in the absence of support from systemic changes in norms, food availability, and food affordability. So, for example, Asher and colleagues found that only 1.9% of the US population were current vegans or vegetarians, but a full 10.2% more were lapsed vegetarians or vegans, of whom 37% were interested in readopting the diet if they could just manage it, if things were a bit easier for them in being able to do so. The kinds of difficulties they cited, in many ways, these were things about plant-based eating not being normal enough, it being too niche. So they cited things like not being a member of a plant-based organization, sticking out from the crowd, not identifying with vegetarian or veganism, and having insufficient contact with other vegetarians or vegans, suggesting that if this sort of thing were plant-based eating were much more normalized, it would be much easier for folks to do it. So in a general study of food systems, dynamics, sort of reviewing the literature, Mozaffarian and colleagues summarized, growing evidence makes it clear that multiple complex factors beyond personal decisions strongly influence dietary choices and patterns. Importantly, wider commercial pressures also affect consumer choice, including food packaging, marketing, advertisements, and sociocultural perceptions of norms, status, and prestige. So, oh, shoot, not again. Sorry, one second. Oh, no. So uncoordinated, these influences are powerful and are nearly insurmountable barriers to making healthy dietary choices for many people worldwide. However, with thoughtful, evidence-informed policy, each of these factors also provides an opportunity for governments to support improvements in diets, health, well-being, and equity. So, I think a really great step in the right direction here towards helping make system change in the direction of more plant-based food system was Health Canada's recent food guide, came out 2019, and dietary guidelines. The first of which, dietary guidelines, is that vegetables, fruit, whole grains, and protein foods should be consumed regularly, and among protein foods, consume plant-based more often. So these guidelines were the result of basing the food guide on science and consultations with public health officials and excluding animal agriculture industries from influencing the food guide as they had in the past, prior to 2019. And these industries did and continue to vociferously oppose the new food guide. And the food guide, unfortunately, faces some other barriers to adoption, as found in a study by Charbois and colleagues. So agreement and perceived affordability. Agreement with the food guide, so only 47% of Canadians agreed that the food guide aligned with their understanding of healthy eating. Also perceived affordability, taste, and time were factors that Canadians cited in difficulty aligning with the food guide. So another great step in the right direction of helping to support a more plant-based food system is Canada's front of pack labels, so just got approved this summer, praising consumers of high saturated fat, sugar, and salt, which will only be required though by January 1st of 2026, so it'll take a while to come online. But unfortunately, many products that aren't usually labeled, including many animal products, single ingredient animal products, fast food, so restaurant prepared animal products, they're all exempt from the labeling. And actually meat producers and their allies were successful in lobbying for the inclusion of additional exemptions for ground beef, which usually does carry a label, but these folks argued for actually not including ground beef because it was so similar to non-ground single ingredient beef, which usually doesn't carry a label. So front of pack labels, so they got these exemptions for ground beef to the front of pack labels appraising consumers of high saturated fat content. So you can see the industry opposition again. So the Canadian government has also made some very good but very modest investments in first pulse processing for plant-based meats, with 153 million invested into Protein Industries Canada Supercluster, and funding for a pilot program for fruit and vegetable vouchers, with 1.5 million from Health Canada going to the Community Food Centres of Canada's Market Greens initiative, paid for by Health Canada. So these sorts of programs are great, but they're really tiny compared to the support that's going to politically powerful animal agriculture industries. And they're not, they're the great first step in the right direction, but we need much more of this to get the kind of change that we need as quickly as we need it. And these animal agriculture industries, they're very good at opposing these sorts, even these modest measures at systemic change. So if we want to get the kind of change that we need, we're going to need a lot more political will. And that's what our group is interested in helping to develop. So the first thing our group's been doing under its new strategic plan is assembling an academic research team to understand and explain existing Canadian food and agricultural policy and propose alternatives. So in consultation with academics across Canada, Maddie Youngman, a graduate researcher at the University of Alberta, and I have produced a preliminary report, which we're still developing, but it's on the extent to which government support to agriculture in Canada supports the production and consumption of animal products in relation to plant-based foods for direct human consumption. So you can see the preliminary report, but it's still just a draft, so please don't cite it. We're still developing and refining it, and we tend to have an academic version ready to submit by the end of the year, and a public version ready to sort of present by the end of the year as well. So while we expect our final results to change somewhat, our present overall finding is that about 2/3 of transfers from taxpayers to the agricultural sector in Canada actually support the value chain of animal products, while the remaining 1/3 is split between supporting the value chain of plant-based foods for direct human consumption and supporting other products like biofuels. And as you can see, it's sort of more than an order of magnitude more than what like the protein supercluster gives for plant-based processors. So that would be our estimate so far of total transfers to the agricultural sector supporting animal agriculture from taxpayers, about 3.5 billion, and billion with a B, in 2019, 3.2 billion in 2020, and about 5.3 billion in 2020. So Maddie and I, together with our collaborators, really much of the point of doing that is we want to sort of show how it might point towards a reallocation of funding with increasing support to plant-based products or plant-based production. So Maddie and I, together with our collaborators, are also working on building a positive case for concrete workable policies that will support a just transition to a more plant-based food system in Canada, including a white paper on a Green New Deal for food and agriculture in Canada, making the case for a just transition to a predominantly plant-based food system, but including evidence of the efficacy of policies that don't, go all the way to a plant-based food system, but move in the direction of such a food system, like, for example, a much more scaled up form of support for consumers to buy fruits and vegetables, like maybe make them half price for everyone in Canada, for example. So our intention is for this work to be directly relevant to lobbying for policy change, resulting in at least one position paper that can form the basis for concrete lobbying efforts by mid-2023. So of course it's gonna, while we think that the research is sort of a necessary condition for effective political advocacy, it's certainly not sufficient. We need real political power to make that and to mobilize that power to make anything happen. So our current strategy for building the political power that's going to be necessary to push for these changes includes, first, fundraising to support our lobbying efforts. We hope to be able to get to the point where we can have a professional lobbyist in Ottawa. But even before that, funds can help us build our constituency and lobby, even without a professional in Ottawa. So everyone in our group currently, we're all volunteers. And then the second aspect of our strategy is building a constituency among plant-based producers, processors, and retailers, as well as consumer, public health, environmental, and of course, animal advocacy groups. And then finally, we're hoping to pretty soon, maybe mid next, as well, they'll be away in the summer, but perhaps as early as fall of next year, begin lobbying the federal government for change. I mean, in principle, we could even start before that, depending on how things developed. But yeah, so beginning to lobby the federal government for change by meeting strategically with relevant MPs, civil servants, staff, party leadership, and so on. And we're hoping that as folks in Ottawa, some of you might be especially able to help with this last part of our strategy. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Matt, our contact person in Ottawa, who's going to tell you a bit about how you can get involved in our plans for lobbying MPs in Ottawa. And then Eleanor, our outreach and policy lead, will say a bit in particular about the federal procurement campaign that you can get involved in. So that's another kind of policy change that we're thinking about being able to push for, changing federal purchasing to more plant-based foods. As well, Eleanor is going to talk about as related opportunities to campaign for plant-based procurements at the municipal and university level that she's been really leading in and then finally, Ina, our fundraising and IT lead, will conclude by asking you some questions in relation to potentially changing the name of our group. So Matt, do you want to say a few words?
Thanks so much, Howard. Yeah, that was really great. So I just want to say, yeah, my name's Matthew Bryan, or just go by Matt. Just want to say I live in Ottawa. I've lived in Ottawa for about 16 years. I've got a place in Riverview Park. I got a wife and 2 daughters. They're 7 and 12. So just a little bit about me. I began eating plant-based quite a while ago, just more interested in the health side of things. And shortly after, I realized, obviously how cruel and unnecessary the animal agriculture industry really is. And so I've really always considered myself an environmentalist. And, I've come to realize that a global transition to a plant-based diet is really the only way we're going to avoid catastrophic climate change. So, obviously with a world population of 8 billion, kind of my main concern now is really the ecological stability of the earth. And so, as our Nation Rising members are really spread all across Canada, I'm in Ottawa, so I'm the contact person for Nation Rising in Ottawa. So for any meetings we set up with politicians and their aides. So we're also looking to develop a constituency, as Howard mentioned, of plant-based producers, processors and retailers that we can use as allies to help us in our effort. And it'd be great if, if the members of VegOttawa or activists living in Ottawa would join us on our lobbying efforts. So any help from you would be amazing. So, the key thing is we need really looking for people located in Ottawa so we can set up some face-to-face meetings. And so we want to bring our research findings and policy change suggestions to people that obviously that can enact them. All right, well, look, thank you. And I'll hand over to Eleanor, and she's going to discuss what our plans are further.
Oh, thanks so much, Matt. Eleanor, you're muted still?
Okay, I'm just going to bring up my presentation here. Okay, let me just bring that down and put this as a slideshow. Okay, everybody can see that and everybody can hear me, right? Okay, so let's go. So yes, first of all, thank you for inviting us here today. We're very happy to share all the information and findings of our team. So I'm going to talk about transitioning to plant-based food procurements on 3 institutions: the federal government, universities, and cities. So this is just a representation of the 3. There's also some schools being addressed, but not through ourselves here. Let me just go directly to the next one. So talk about the federal food procurement. This is very much in its infancy. First of all, I'll start by showing the planetary health diet, which probably most of you are familiar with. As you can see, the amount of animal protein suggested in the planetary health diet is very small, less than 1/8 of the plate. And to achieve that in North America, we need a reduction of 79% in meat consumption. The overall world average is 50%, but because of the high consumption in North America and lower consumptions everywhere else, we would need to significantly drop that by 79%. In April of this year, the University of Waterloo came out with a major report on irreversible extreme heat, protecting Canadians and communities from a lethal future. This is primarily about adaptation strategies. Here you can see the southern corridor in Canada that will be hit very hard by extreme heat. And as you can see here, sorry, the temperatures, for example, in Ottawa, between 76 and 2005, we had about 10 to 12 days per year that were over 30 degrees. Whereas depending on these two scenarios, we could hit almost 60 degrees of over 30 degrees. That means our whole summer would be over 30 degrees. This graph you've probably already seen before. It depicts the greenhouse gas emissions based on different types of foods. And here you can see that animal protein generates a very, very significant portion of the greenhouse gas emissions compared to plant protein. In addition to the land, and we talked a little bit about land before, so there's a total of 4 billion hectares that are being used today on the planet based on our current diet. If we were to drop, if we were going to move to vegan, that would drop to only 1 billion hectares. So that would be a huge potential to reforest and rewild that land. It would make such a huge difference. Okay, so why food procurement represents a unique opportunity to advance climate, health, and economic goals. So food systems are at the intersection of health, environmental sustainability, animal welfare, economic development, and labor. The federal government shapes the food industry, could have a major impact. And given its scope and scale, the federal food procurement can influence the industry and transform the Canadian food system into one that is healthy and sustainable. Food procurement encompasses the main policy priorities of the Canadian government, includes them all. Food security and health guidelines are based on science, reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the food supply chain, expanding economic opportunity through investment in innovations, which stand to create more jobs. And like Howard mentioned, the Canada Food Guide no longer includes meat and dairy. So in the mandate letter to the Minister of Public Services and Procurement in December of 2021, it was Philomena Tassi at the time, Trudeau wrote that as minister, I expect you to seek opportunities within your portfolio to support our whole of government effort to reduce emissions, create clean jobs, and address the climate-related challenges and communities. So definitely there's an opportunity within the food system. So our overarching ask from Public Services and Procurement Canada would be to transition 75% of all animal-based food purchasing to plant-based by the end of 2023, to promote climate-friendly food across federal offices, agencies, and events, and to promote sustainable food innovations. We would request that the federal government reform procurement policies to include food sustainability and reduced food waste as explicit goals of the federal food procurement policy, require that the social cost of carbon be factored into all federal food procurement bidding procedures, and to require vendor transparency as to the carbon emissions related to food supply by the end of 2023. So we wrote a letter to the current MP, Helena Jacek, back in September of this year, basically repeating what I just said. So we have not yet heard back. We will be sending a follow-up letter shortly. And as Matt said, we are looking for volunteers to develop strategy and lobbying efforts in Ottawa, and that includes the federal food procurement. So you can contact Matt or you can contact myself. I'll be talking now about transitioning Canadian universities to plant-based menus. This was a project that started in the fall of 2020 with a deadline of achieving a KPI of 60%, key performance indicator of 60% plant-based meals by the end of 2022. That was the challenge we gave to the universities. The primary objectives of this was to increase awareness of the destructive impacts of animal agriculture on our planet and animals, to nudge universities to be accountable for educating and leading by example on the impacts of animal agriculture, especially being universities. And thirdly, to instill this accountability by accelerating towards plant-based meals at all university cafeterias and eateries with the KPI of 60% by the end of this year. So these were the dining services teams that we had as speakers throughout the 2 years. We had the University of British Columbia, Guelph, McMaster, Victoria, Queen's, University of Toronto, and the University of Montreal. So we had 8 speakers, and then we asked them to come back for an alumni event, which we held on November the 9th. The only one who could not attend because extenuating circumstances was Gordon Coolidge. So just to show how many people were involved in this. So these were the 7 universities, but even within those 7 universities, there were other people, such as Valerie True, for example, from the University of Guelph, the Child Learning Center, Valerie had converted this Child Learning Center to 100% plant-based over a year ago. So imagine 100%. University of Toronto, we also had Dr. David Jenkins, a medical doctor and professor. And University of Victoria, we worked with some amazing people, Holly Cecil and Nicole Federley, who helped us. As well, we had 4 additional universities. They were not speakers, but they did participate in different ways. And we worked with several organizations, the Better Food Foundations, Dr. Marco Springman from Oxford, Gerard Bishop, ex-government scientist from Australia, HSI Canada, and the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. So there were a lot of people involved. So we got the results about 3 weeks ago. So I compiled this graph. So this represents the difference between 2022 and 2020. And here we're referring to all types of meats and fish. So it's going from high to low here. So University of Victoria was at 72%, down to 59%, so a decrease of 13%. University of British Columbia was at 70%, down to 50%. University of Montreal, 53 to 47. Queen's stayed about the same. University of Guelph, now Guelph is an agricultural college, remember, so 45 to 28 is very, very impressive, a decrease of minus 17, and that was our lowest percentage. The University of Toronto, this is the dining services at St. George camp, the residents at St. George campus, so it's a subset. In terms of vegetarian and vegan, and these we want to go up. So University of British Columbia, we'll talk just about the vegan numbers for now. So they went up from 15 to 25, a 10% increase. University of Montreal, they somehow had started quite high, but dropped, but they did increase on the vegetarian side. University of Victoria from 18 to 36%. Queen's from 33 to 43. And again, Guelph went from 35 to 58%, so an increase of 23. So very good results from our chefs, and we're not going to stop there. We're going to challenge our chefs again. So we're instituting the Challenge 2023. We're asking chefs to convert at least 50% of what they have today as vegetarian to vegan. We're asking them to surpass the current highest score for vegan of 58%. And the lowest percentage for meat at 28%. So what's next for our university campaigns? In May of 2023, we're asking universities who have measured their emissions to come and present in terms of what's entailed and what changes they made. So we have the University of Victoria booked for May of 2023. And as well, we have the University of Guelph, Vijay Nair and Valerie True coming to talk about their amazing progress. We've also started the Plant-Based University Student Campaign. We have Lindsay Kaesla working on this campaign. She's working on 4 universities, Waterloo, University of Alberta, Dalhousie, and McGill. And other plant-based campaigns, the Plant-Based Cities Movement, which I'll talk about shortly, and the federal food procurement, which we discussed. So the Plant-Based Cities Movement, another major movement. It's a grassroots, nonpartisan movement started in December 2021. It was a climate action inspired by the Canadian University Initiative, is that we wanted to be a national effort, but we wanted to have local representation. This was a climate action while I was with another plant-based group. And so we focus on cities because over 81% of Canadians live in cities, and many climate impacts are felt much more acutely in urban areas. Cities are responsible for up to 70% of human-caused emissions, They're prime centers of food consumptions, and virtually none of them have included the food emissions in their climate action policies. So our goal is to shift city spending from animal-based foods to plant-based foods to mitigate climate change. So we've had some successes with motions. Vancouver, British Columbia, this was not our effort. This was before we came to be. And the Vancouver Humane Society had worked with the councillors in Vancouver. And they put together a very, very comprehensive report whereby the city of Vancouver could save almost $100,000 by converting 20% of the animal-based food to plant-based food, as well as reducing greenhouse gases by 500 tons. It was a 20% shift from animal-based to plant-based. And the significant plant-based local, the success factors were the significant plant-based local small businesses support at the council meeting, and Vancouver aspires to be the greenest city in the world. Another success is Montreal. I live in Montreal, so I'm quite happy with this one. So Montreal, we have a large city council, 64 plus the mayor. Mayor Valérie Plante is vice chair of the C40 steering committee, and she's a very green mayor. The strategies used with Montreal, firstly, there was the Coalition for a Sustainable Food Transition, which had approached the head of the Environmental Committee in 2021. This was a new coalition formed in August of 2021. I was not aware of it at the time. I did find out about it in January and I joined it then. But what I had done in parallel, because I did not know about them, I had sent a presentation on animal ag to the above head of the Environmental Committee in February of 2022. And I received a phone call back from them and they were very interested in the presentation. So we developed a relationship. And I also had presented to the leader of the opposition party and to the head of the opposition party. In Montreal, unlike many other cities, we do have different parties at the municipal level. So Montreal passed a motion unanimously on May 16th this year. And these are the clauses in that motion. So firstly, to adhere to the C40 Good Food Cities Declaration, to offer a minimum of 75% vegetarian food at the events. Most of city councils don't have cafeterias, and Montreal doesn't either. They generally use their food funds for events that they organize. They committed to aligning their food procurement policies with the planetary health diet, support an overall increase in the consumption of plant-based foods on its territory, and they want to work with concessionaires who operate food service areas and who have contracts with the city to ensure a greater proportion of their offerings are plant-based. And that the Montreal Catering Office encourage responsible food consumption among local and national visitors. So that's really good, by favoring consumption venues that favor the supply of local regional products and that practice the reduction of food waste or that promote the vegetarian cuisine. And they wanted this declaration to be transmitted to all our boroughs to follow suit. The other success is Brampton, and that's part of our PBCM team. So we were very happy about that. The tactics used, they built a relationship with the environmental counselor. They put together diverse delegation with expertise in medicine, environmental science, and youth leader, the youth leader of the Peel Environmental Youth Alliance. And they presented to the Environmental Sustainability Committee, which approved the motion and referred the delegation to city councils. So the initial ask was to increase municipal purchases of plant-based protein foods by 50%. The motion passed was to transition a substantial amount of plant-based, and that was in August. So we're waiting to see what the transition will look like. We are addressing other cities. We have not had a success as yet, but the teams are working very hard. If any of you in this audience are interested in supporting their efforts with these cities or starting efforts in new cities, we're there to help you. We have the collateral, we have the team, we have the expertise. So please do contact us. And I think, Ina, you were going to put, I think, some of these URLs in the chat, please. Thank you, Ina. So that's the end of my presentation here. I'm going to stop the sharing for a minute. Oh no, yeah, let me just escape here. Sorry, I'm going to play the video from the University of Victoria. It's quite an inspiring video that was produced this fall. So I hope everything works well here, and here we go.
Did you know 41% of Canada's greenhouse gas emissions are attributed to our food systems? The University of Victoria is leading Canadian universities shifting menus to reduce our carbon footprint. One of the many reasons why UVic ranks second in the world for climate action and addressing the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals.
Hi, I'm Tony Eastman. I'm the Executive Chef for the University of Victoria. We're in a brand new building. This building is Passive House LEED Gold. So we had to do a lot of changes in the kitchen. So we're focused on induction cooking. Everything that we've been working on is to try and lower our carbon emissions in this building. And I think the focus on lowering our beef proteins to a minimum will be a good start for us. I'm standing in front of the Greens kiosk where we serve 100% vegan options. It's the first thing you'll see when you come into this area. The a la carte menu is up on the board, and you see the Kung Pao California Bowl, the Chai Masala Curry, and the Tex-Mex wrap. The a la carte menu does change weekly. We have our daily chili. It's such a good vegan chili that you actually don't have to add any meat to it because it's so good. All around, we have the shawarma, we have the grill, we have a pizza, we have a deli, and then we have a stir-fry section, plus a lot of grab and goes here at the university. Each one of our kiosks will have a vegetarian option in each area. The other thing that we focused on in our shawarma is we do a halal chicken. We also do a portobello mushroom shawarma. Plus we do a falafel shawarma too. We also have the pizzas where we do serve a vegetarian and a vegan pizza. And then once again, our sandwiches have a large options of any vegan, vegetarian options. In our grills and our food service areas, we default to a vegan cheese, a Daya cheddar. And then also we have our stir fry station. All our sauces except for our pad thai sauce is vegan. We're at the grill. This is our 50-50 burger. It's 50% ground beef and 50% pea protein. It's a 5.33 ounce patty. It's one of the burgers that was started by David Cite at UBC to lower the beef consumption here at the universities. I was very fortunate to go to UBC with my executive student, Chris Bailey, to Forward Food. This is where it first started for us in trying to lower our beef consumption. So with Forward Food, we basically moved towards greener by default to kind of amalgamate everything together to make sure we're all focused on more green options here at the universities.
Okay, so thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Eleanor. So, Ina, I think next you're gonna just help us out with the survey. Really quickly, I know Ina helping with the survey was a last minute addition, so I just want to give Ina a brief introduction. So Ina Maria has spent the past decade working in small and medium-sized businesses in management and sales, as well as administrative support roles. In 2021, Ina Maria founded Libero Solutions, where she works as a small business consultant and social media manager. Vegan since September of 2020 and an animal rights activist since January of 2021. So good work, very, very quick work there. Ina has been involved in wildlife rescue and large online pressure campaigns. She believes that change not only has to come from the public, but from the government, and that is what Nation Rising is all about. So Ina, yeah, take away. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for that. So first of all, thank you for taking time on a Sunday to do this. I know a lot of people like to take their weekends off, but I think this is the best time for us to look at driving change. And thank you, VegOttawa, for hosting us in the first place, because it's just more places for us to share what we're doing. This is a very important movement, and systemic change is where it's all about. As a grassroots activist, I can say, it's important to be part of the whole structure from, start to finish. And for me, I think it's, we need the most help in the systemic change because we need more voices so we can get loud enough. And that's where you come in as well. So I'm just actually going to share to you a survey link. So first thing, I'm actually going to copy that or paste that link into the chat here. And I believe VegOttawa has also kindly offered to share that link post our meeting as well. So thank you for that. So that link that I just sent you is going to actually take you to an external Survey Monkey. All of your answers are optional. However, I do ask that you take the time to answer them. So I'm going to share my screen and actually just quickly walk you through it. So you can just let me know if you have any questions about it or if it's clear. So if you can just confirm you can see my screen here. We should be on the Nation Rising VegOttawa survey. Perfect. Thank you for all the thumbs up. So it's really just 4 questions. It should take you under 2 minutes, really, maybe 3. The first one is really just asking you to rank these names from, sort of like best to least. And what I've done is I've asked you folks to go from love to dislike. There's only one love and there's only one this is okay and so on. So you can only pick one love, and then the rest of them you'll have to sort of find your way out here. So your favorite one should be your actual favorite one. The next question is really what's the first word or phrase that comes to mind. You don't actually have to be super descriptive, but I'll give you an example. When I describe Ina, I would like people to think I'm bubbly, energetic, kind, hardworking. So the same idea when you hear a name, what does that speak to you? Same idea for these, and these are the options that we have. There are 6 answers in total. Your gender identification, we've left that open, and we've also just asked, this is solely for our demographic data, so we know that we're speaking the right way and being able to communicate with our audience correctly. And then the last one is our age bracket. For the exact same reason, really, we're drawing that demographics. We make sure that, for example, someone who's a Zoomer millennial will love 3 to 6 second videos on our channel, but someone who's Generation X will actually get really frustrated about that. And that's what science says. So we want to make sure we're communicating with you the right way. And that's it. That's all the questions that we're asking for. This will help us absolutely tremendously. And I'm seeing that there's a chat, so I'm just making sure if there are any questions. Perfect. Okay. Someone just had to leave. Thank you, Ella. Yeah. And if you folks can actually just do that, my recommendation is honestly doing it right now. Since I actually pasted that link, I'll paste it again just so that it's easy to see. It honestly, again, it should take you about 2 minutes, and it will help us tremendously. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Ina. Really appreciate it. So yeah, so if folks can just fill that out while we're taking questions, be happy. We'd be most grateful if you could do that. So yeah, Liz, do you want to?
Yeah, I'd be happy. I'll facilitate the Q&A if you guys are okay with that.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great.
If everybody wants to save that link to the Survey Monkey, if you're not able to do it right now, just make sure you have that open in your browser. So as soon as the presentation's done, so when it's fresh in your mind, you can complete that. We'll also be sending it through our email newsletter to VegOttawa members, but still, if you can do it as soon as possible, that really will help Nation Rising. Drum roll, possibly Food Forward Canada or something like that. So we're now going to open the Q&A portion of this event. So I see that we still have a few attendees here and participants. So now's your opportunity to be able to ask anything that you've been curious about, any questions about possibly becoming an animal activist, getting involved in Nation Rising, or what can be done as advocates on the ground doing that work. So if you have any questions, you can either use the little reaction button to put your hand up, or you can just simply type your name in the chat, or you can send a request through Zoom to unmute yourself and ask it verbally if that's your preference. So let's see those questions, everybody. I guess while we're waiting, something that I'll share is I learned, in your little Survey Monkey, I didn't know that there was a group called Zoomers. So I feel very that's interesting. I didn't know that before.
They also go by Generation Z, right? So there's like
Gen Z, yeah.
Or
Gen
Z.
Z.
Sorry, I'm American background.
Yeah, the American thing. There's also a Gen Y, I believe, after the Gen Zs. Yeah, there are, and they are definitely named, and they are also an extremely important demographic, because these individuals are our future. So you know, as you know, sort of, you know, we transition into the education side of things, you know, the future relies on these individuals and the decisions that they make and what they purchase. These are the end users really for the information. So quite important to appeal to them. So anyone who's out there, anyone who's, you know, who is, you know, focusing on educating online, I think it's alpha for the folks. Oh my goodness. So many.
Sorry, they had to
confused.
restart the
Exactly.
alphabet, right? Because there's
They
Gen X, then Gen Y, which is millennials, then Gen Z, which are the Zoomers,
Oh
and then
my
they're
goodness.
restarting with Alpha. So
Yeah. But yeah, we definitely, the way that we speak online is extremely important, and who you're reaching. So that's also the way that, you know, we need to communicate. And you know, when we're looking at like lobbying in Ottawa, knowing your audience is going to be extremely important, and we can gather a lot of information just from learning from generations past, and the information about the incoming generations that are growing up. Barbara actually just wrote that the US has a long way to go. We actually learned quite a lot from the US as well, especially through Agricultural Fairness Alliance. I actually heard of AFA before Nation Rising, and through the latest animal and vegan advocacy summit that just passed, it actually showed the US is working on quite a lot of new you know, adventures, or whatever you want to call them, ventures, sorry, that should actually benefit and also help us get educated on what we need to do in Canada as well. Because if the US sort of follows, you know, Canada should be following closely behind, right? And yes, the government is very difficult.
Yeah. So it doesn't look like we have any questions, but that's okay. Maybe people are just taking some time to absorb all of this. So again, I please welcome everybody to check out Nation Rising's website. We will also be sending out e-blasts that will include the recording in case you want to revisit any of the really, really amazing statistics and information that was presented today. And then, as Ina generously put, you can just send an email to unite@nationrising.ca if you have any additional questions for them or would like to get involved with them. And I think that basically wraps up this amazing session. Thank you so much to Nation Rising for joining us. We are so, so happy to be the host for such an incredible evening of, or I guess afternoon of information. I can see a bunch of hearts and thumbs up. This makes me so happy. So I'm just going to stop the